Hello, my name is Jake Allen Villarenzo. I am BEED 1-2 and we're going to talk about water cycle and oxygen cycle. When we say water cycle, first, let us first define what is water. Next slide. Water is the most essential element in the earth. Without water, no living things will survive. It makes sense. Water have many types. Includes fresh water, salt water, tap water, distilled water, and mineral water. Next slide. Water cycle. Water cycle shows the continuous movement of water within the earth and atmosphere. Water evaporates into water vapor, condenses to form clouds, and participate back to the earth in the form of snow and rain. It also includes hail, to be exact. The water cycle is also known as the hydrologic cycle or H2O cycle. And the main explanation of water cycle is that the water cycle describes the sun, which drives the water cycle, heats water into the ocean, how water evaporates from the surface of the earth, rises into the atmosphere, cools, and condenses into rain or snow in clouds. And then, it falls again into the surface as a precipitation. The cycle of water in and out to the atmosphere is a significant aspect of the weather patterns on Earth. Hello, next slide. I'm going to represent to you the water cycle. There are four components. There are evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and runoff/collection. Next slide. Water cycle process. When we say water cycle process, it is the process of the water cycle or something like the step by step and how water cycle works. Next slide. First step is the evaporation. It is a process where liquid changes to vapor form. It is something like liquid to gas state. Evaporation turns the water that is on the surface of oceans, rivers, and lakes into water vapor using the energy of the sun. Okay, I explained this earlier. Evaporation means that where drives the water cycle, heats water in the ocean, how water evaporates from the surface of the earth, then rises into the atmosphere. As you can see here, the rays of the sun strikes the ocean, then some parts of the water will rise up, and that is what we call evaporation, where it is a liquid to gas state, and it is also where water vapor or vapor occurs. It is rises to the upper or something like into the atmosphere, and that is the process of evaporation. Next slide. Condensation. When we say condensation, it is the process by which water vapor into the air is changed into liquid water. The water vapor rises into the atmosphere and cools, forming tiny water droplets by a process called condensation. These water droplets make clouds. Okay, I'm going to explain this to you. As the water vapor rises higher and higher, the cool air on the atmosphere causes the water vapor to turn back into liquid water. It means that gas to liquid states, I'll repeat, gas to liquid states, where it will creating clouds, and this process is what we call condensation. As you can see in the video, the vapor rises into the atmosphere, and then after that, it is converted to liquid, where the tiny water droplets compile to each other, and this is where the clouds are formed here in the condensation process. Precipitation. When we say precipitation, those water droplets that condense make up clouds. If those tiny water droplets combine with each other, they grow larger and larger, eventually become too heavy to stay in the air. When we say precipitation, this is where the process of the water droplets compile to each other, and if the water droplets are too heavy to carry on of the clouds, then the tendency is that it will start to fall down, and that is what we call the rain. There are also a lot of types of precipitation where that includes rain, snow, The snow occurs depending on the temperature, hails, um, small chunk of ice that is going to fall down to the ground. Water cycle summary. I'm going to show you, or something like I'm going to teach you, the summarization of water cycle in a simpler way, okay? This is in the simpler way. There are three components, the basic three components of water cycle. There are evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. When we say evaporation, the evaporation, it is something like the liquid water from the ocean or something like rivers and lakes evaporates due to the high temperature into water vapor. Okay? And then, the process of condensation where the water vapor condenses to form clouds. After that, precipitation, it is precipitates back to the earth in the form of rain and snow. Oxygen cycle. Oxygen cycle. Next slide. Oxygen cycle. The circulation of oxygen in the various forms through nature. Free in the air and dissolved in the water. Oxygen is the second only to nitrogen in the abundance among uncombined elements in the atmosphere. It means that the oxygen is the second only because nitrogen is the first element that is found in the atmosphere, which is the nitrogen has the more components compared to the oxygen. Next slide. This is the representation of oxygen cycle. As you can see here, there's a cow and there's a tree. The cow gives carbon dioxide to the tree, and then the tree absorbs the carbon dioxide and turns into oxygen, and the oxygen gives to the cows so the cows can breathe normally. Oxygen cycle process. There are two components of oxygen cycle process. There are photosynthesis and respiration. First up, let's go to the photosynthesis. When we say photosynthesis, plants take in carbon dioxide and water and use them to make food. Their food is simply sugar, or also known as glucose. Process in which green plants use the energy from the sun to make carbohydrates from the carbon dioxide and the water in the presence of chlorophyll. When we say chlorophyll, chlorophyll is defined as you can see the green things on the leaves. As you can see, the leaves are color green. That is the chlorophyll. The definition of chlorophyll is that it is the green color that is seen often in leaves, as I said, synthesis. This is the representation of photosynthesis. As you can see, there is sunlight, the plant itself, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, and the water. The photosynthesis is the process on how plants make their own food, okay? The process is that they absorb the radiant energy from the sun. The water absorbs from the roots of the plant, and then the carbon dioxide will also go to the plant, and then if those three were mixed together or combined together, the result is that the plant will release oxygen. Another representation of photosynthesis, as you can see, there is the light or the radiant energy from the sun, and the leaves or leaf absorbs the light energy, and then the carbon dioxide plus water combined in the leaves. That is the process of making their own food. That is results of carbohydrates, glucose, and oxygen. When we say glucose, it's just a simple sugar. That's all. Respiration. When we say respiration, animals or humans take in oxygen through the process of respiration. Animals/humans break down sugars and food. Process by which an organism exchanges gases with its environment. This slide, living organism contribution. First up, humans and animals breathe out carbon dioxide through their process of metabolism, sparkling the process of photosynthesis once again. linking back to the plant's contribution to the oxygen cycle. It makes sense because humans and animals breathe in and breathe out. When we say breathe in, we absorb oxygen. When we say breathe out, we release carbon dioxide. Okay? The second one is that oxygen cycles begin with the plants and photosynthesis. Which it makes sense because plants always started on how to make oxygen. Through photosynthesis, plants convert the energy from the sun and water into carbohydrates, into oxygen, into carbon dioxide to maintain their metabolism. Next slide. The summary of oxygen cycle. This is me again. I'm going to show you again the representation of oxygen cycle. The main process of oxygen cycle is that the entire cycle can be summarized as the oxygen begins with the process of photosynthesis in the presence of sunlight. This is where also the plants make their own food, releases oxygen back into the atmosphere, which humans and animals breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, and again, linking back to the plants. That's all. Do you have any questions? If you have none, thank you for attending our class and see you again next time. Again, Jake Allen Lorenzo, BEED 1-2.